Rainier Avenue Radio. Rainier Avenue Radio. Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me? 1 2 1 2 1 2. Is wireless on, Daniel? Okay, Juan, can you hear the monitor? Okay, this is probably what you're going to have. I think that's as loud as it goes, but you can hear it okay? Okay.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Rainier Avenue Radio's Election Night Returns Special. In what many have called the most important elections, local elections in Seattle's history, we will be here at Rainier Avenue Radio. We're going to talk with some of the personalities and some of the players behind the scenes. I have a couple of calls out to some folks who are in the scenes, and we'll see what type of decisions that the city of Seattle came up with this evening. So we're really excited about this and hearing about, once again, what consultants and what people are calling the most important elections in recent Seattle history. We'll sit here tonight and we will talk about the ballots and the results as they come in. And we will also talk with consultants who have been consulting the candidates and consulting some of the major issues going on in elections throughout the city, and also from a regional perspective and also from a national perspective, where Eric Adams has been declared the winner of the mayor's race in New York City this evening. The second African-American mayor in the history of New York City, the 110th elected mayor in New York City's history. So hopefully we'll have some more information coming to you along in regards to some of the pertinent national races. But Eric Adams is going to be elected mayor of New York City. So we will have information coming in regards to that race as it comes in. Obviously, here in the city of Seattle tonight, a number of very, very important high-profile elections and ballot measures. The mayor's race, and we've heard so much about this and the major issues surrounding the mayor's race in the city of Seattle, the homeless issue and public safety, and who will be our next police chief. And the two candidates, Bruce Harrell and Lorena Gonzalez, had a vigorous debate over the last couple of months, and we'll see how those elections turned out. The control of the Seattle City Council, and we're looking to see in a very spirited contest. In fact, out on Rainier Avenue, we're seeing people actively recruit votes and making sure people are turning in ballots. Nikita Oliver, a community activist out of the south end of Seattle, who also ran for mayor 4 years ago, going up against Sarah Nelson, a businesswoman, the owner of a brewery up in North Seattle, she and her family. And once again, she also ran for the Seattle City Council 4 years ago, and they were in a nip and tuck battle. It'll be interesting to see how that election turns out. We have a number of key ballot measures, not to mention, of course, and not to forget the King County Executive's race. You have longtime King County Executive Dow Constantine facing a challenge from within his own party. State Senator Joe Wynn putting up a campaign to see if it is his turn to ascend from the state Senate to the King County Executive's office, and that's been a race that obviously has been won on the hot seat in front of people's minds this year. So looking forward to seeing the results as they're coming in from the county. So a lot of important ballot measures this evening. Cindy Laws will be with us at 7:45. She, of course, hosted the debate last week with Joe and Executive Constantine. And Cindy always has a variety of different things to say about politics, so well versed. She's going to give us an update on some of the major ballot initiatives that are going on throughout King County and also throughout the state of Washington, and discuss those. At 8 o'clock, we're going to have Lynn Idahosa, who's an activist out of the Federal Way community. And obviously, we wanted to make sure that we incorporate some of the smaller city elections that are going on, because those also impact our region and impact our Puget Sound area. Lynn is a part of the Federal Way Black Collective, the executive director of that organization, and she'll chime in on some of the major races around Federal Way, Kent, Renton, where some of the most vigorous campaigns were going on in some of our smaller municipalities this summer, obviously impacting people of color in a big way. Most of the population shifting to some of those smaller cities. So it's going to give us an opportunity to hear about the impacts of some of the municipal leaders that are going to be coming into office, and also municipal leaders who will be continuing to move on in their positions. So just a real exciting night, and we're looking forward to the polls closing at 8 o'clock. As I was driving over to the Columbia City Theater, I stopped by the Rainier Avenue Community Center, and actually I was held up in traffic as people were actually voting and dropping off their ballots and putting them into the ballot box in front of the community center. So people, if you can believe it, are still turning in ballots and getting to the ballot places throughout the community, and they are putting in their ballots and they are voting. The polls or the ballot boxes will shut down at 8 o'clock. We know from personal experience that ballot is 8 o'clock. So that's one of you out there. Get your ballot in that box. You have approximately 21 minutes to get there. So get your ballots in and get it to vote, and don't get traffic like I did. So we're looking forward to seeing what happens. Unfortunately, he may have been tripped up here, and I know that the number of people this evening will see he does check in on the StreamYard. And the chance to talk with him. He is executive director, the managing partner of the CN4 political firm, worked with the great Butterworth, worked on some of the major campaigns recently here in the local area. We'll have a really good opportunity to hear from Dean and what's going on in some of these local races through the area. You're listening to Juan Cotto at Rainier Avenue Radio.world, our community radio station, your community radio station. The show radio is in a beautiful location here, and just once we are properly listening, I would certainly throw up. Looking forward to having polls at getting our initial to come in, so we can update you and let you know what's going on there in the elections this evening. We've got Daniel support. We've got people in the background studying. So yeah, a fun evening. Once again, it'll be very, very interesting to see the return as they come in. They're coming from across the country nationally. I mentioned at the beginning of the show, Eric Adams, a New York City police officer who has had decades of experience basically leading the community and talking about issues and racial justice in New York City. He has been elected a mayor of New York. That was called by the New York Times about an hour ago, so I'm sure that he will probably be making a statement, and maybe we can connect with some of those statements. The city of New York, and he will be taking office in January, second black elected mayor in New York City, and we're looking forward to hearing his words. And obviously a very character and a very, very unique and dynamic leader, and will be a very, very interesting mayoral shift in New York City. So we're looking forward to seeing what happens there. And as the national campaign who's come across, we'll check in with it. Once again, the major races here in the city of Seattle, the mayor's race. And we started with, I believe, 16 candidates back in the early part of the spring, and we heard just a number of candidates who were out there, and we had some really serious candidates who were out there, including the Colleen Echohawk and former state representative Jessen Farrell. And a number of people were lined up, came through the primaries in August. It came down to two candidates who were very well known, actually former city council members. Well, actually, one of them is a current city council member. Recent city council member Bruce Harrell came through the primary, and he came through with a pretty substantial margin. He was followed up in second place by Lorena Gonzalez, who's a current city council president. And she was focusing on public safety as her major issue, along with the homeless. Bruce talked about a variety of different issues that he thought he would be able to have experience on since he left the city council 2 years ago, and made a long and drawn out detailed process before he stepped into the race. Supported mostly by the business community, but Councilmember Harrell also had an outstanding grassroots campaign in the program, the Democracy Voucher Program. He raised all $100,000 in the Democracy Voucher Program, was able to get that. And Lorena Gonzalez as well. So it'll be interesting to see how the election comes out. At the end of the primary, once again, Councilmember Harrell had established himself as what most people call the clear favorite, although Lorena Gonzalez was a really aggressive campaign, had what many would call a somewhat controversial advertisement that she ran towards the end of the campaign, which drew ire from community leaders such as James Bible and folks who were extremely concerned about the image they portrayed in terms of Bruce Harrell and his campaign. Gonzalez actually last that she went to, and the campaign asked that she pulled them, and who A little bit. Hopefully we'll get a chance to discuss that with some of the consultants that are coming on to discuss the impact that that had on the races this year. Okay, you want to? Absolutely. Hey, come on. Thank you so much. And if you go ahead and throw on a mask real quick as well, if you like that, feel more comfortable. Your name is? Kendall, pleasure to meet you. I'm Juan Cotto with Rainier Avenue Radio, and thank you very much for today. You also
I am volunteering for the campaign, actually straight from here. And today, TV stations about Nikita, and also printing off replacement ballot who maybe registered in another part of the state, COVID or whatnot, or college students. So make sure folks have that option to get access to their ballots and then drop them off down at the Rainier Playfield or up at Rainier Beach.
Kendall, what attracted you to the Nikita Oliver campaign?
Yeah, I think the fact that, you know, last year during the summer, I mean, I grew up in the South End. Nikita's been down in Rainier Beach for about 18 years now. And just to have somebody who is a community organizer, you know, who said last year at events, they were saying during the summer, you know, they're like, well, if you want to work into the system, you have to become a lawyer. So Nikita became a lawyer, but they still went to city council and they, you know, we're told like the system is, it's either rigged or, you know, it's broken. And so just to show that we need to still go ahead and work within the system. I was actually an absentee overseas voter for the mayoral campaign, and Americans overseas were coming up to me when they heard I'm from Seattle because they were so excited about Nikita. So this is also, the rest of the country is looking at this race.
Your effort this summer and putting a lot of time and effort into campaigning, what have you learned about the political process that has been attractive and exciting for you?
Yeah, I've been fortunate. I've been a community organizer and a political organizer. I worked on Obama's campaign in Nevada in 2012. And really just to be, as somebody who grew up in the South End, is now back here. You know, Nikita is not only lawyer, an educator, created creative justice because they're so committed to youth. Because a lot of times youth aren't going to come out and turn out to vote because they're like, okay, what? I'm not seeing the return. And to see somebody who's a candidate, and then also it's not this. I grew up in D2. Define it as, you know, when I try to contact Harold's office, then great to see that return to the community. And so it's really exciting to see South End representation. You know, and I wish that people we're more open-minded when it comes to our in-house neighbors and what people are encountering in the city, and having grown up here, seeing the schism between those who have and those who have nots. But yeah, it's a really exciting time, and especially for progressive politics. And I just hope people have really seen what could be and are hopeful about the future when they go in and vote today.
What's your hope for the election, and what's your hope for the night?
Yeah, I know. You know, with Seattle, it's wonderful that we do have mail-in voting. I've been across the country, where it's not the case. I'm just hoping those who are most vulnerable are going to benefit from policies that are passed from people who are voted into office today, and really see that we listen to our youth, and really get people vote into office who are going to represent the majority of votes in Seattle.
Kendall, thank you so much for spending some time with us this evening.
Thank you.
Really appreciate your candor and thank you so much. And we appreciate the fact of the political process.
Yes, and I'm excited to see this space for Rainier Avenue Radio here. I've long followed you all, so.
We appreciate that so much.
All right, thank you. Have a good night.
A supporter for Nikita Oliver, Kendall, came and spent some time with us tonight. So thank you so much for that. And I see my good friend Dean Nielsen sitting there in the box. Dean, how are you tonight?
I'm doing great. It's going to be a great night. I'm very excited about the election and about the candidates that we're working for.
Dean, tell us a little bit about the key issues that we're going to see this evening. Obviously, there's a mayor's race and a city council race. Tell us what are the key issues that are really going to shape this election this evening, and what are your thoughts about the candidates who are running out there?
I mean, look. Each race has its own dynamic, and each race, is colored by the individual qualities of the candidates. That being said, the two issues that voters are really concerned about this year are homelessness and public safety. And at the end of the day, those are the two main issues that are driving the city. Voters are very angry in Seattle. If you look at if you look at polling, one of the standard measures is called the right track, wrong track, and the wrong track numbers are about as bad as I have ever seen it in Seattle. In fact, when we polled, the pollster said, "I've never seen a wrong track number this bad." And so the right track is about 25%. The wrong track is somewhere over 50%. And that generally means if you're a sitting office holder or represent the status quo right now, you are in trouble. And so that's kind of like what's shaping us. We have a very angry electorate. Voters want change. They want something different. And, I think that they're really going to be moving, they're going to be moving toward, a more moderate lane. Or, honestly, I think that liberal and progressive and conservative and stuff are very overused terms in Seattle elections. I think it's more populist versus establishment. And I think I think this election, the establishment's going to strike back.
Just judging from young Kendall that was here visiting this evening, she spoke of her campaign support for Nikita Oliver, who is running. She ran 4 years ago as mayor, running for Seattle City Council, ended up meeting Sarah Dixon after the primary, and two very distinct styles in candidates, two very distinct styles in campaigns. What does that mean to us in the Seattle electorate, and how this race is shaped up?
Yeah, I mean, I think the city council race, it kind of got overshadowed in a lot of ways by the city attorney's race, which became red hot when Chris Gregoire and Gary Locke endorsed the Republican candidate. So that kind of exploded that race, and I think the city council race is kind of overlooked by a lot of people in the media, which is a very interesting race with two very different candidates, and. I honestly think it didn't get enough attention in the media. And the other very interesting thing I think this election is we have two candidates that were outright proponents of abolitionism. With a term I don't really like because I do respect the original abolitionists. But that being said, it's like the notion that we're going to dramatically defund the police and walk away from law enforcement, I think it got overshadowed by, inflammatory tweets and a variety of other, kind of more salacious aspects of the race.
Long-time city attorney Pete Holmes, he drew two challenges this year in the primary, and both of them went by him. They both passed him. Ann Davison, who we heard a lot about, and Cole Thomas Kennedy. And this is another race that has attracted a lot of attention, and some of the most vicious ads I've seen in quite some time. I was wondering your thoughts on the city attorney race and the changes that will happen from Pete Holmes.
Look, I think the city attorney race in Seattle is the most interesting race in America. You had just the stark contrast between the two candidates. You had on one hand, a Republican, which is, Seattle voters haven't elected since 1987. with Paul Crabble's last election. And on the other side, you had a candidate who, said things that probably would disqualify you from most offices. And quite frankly, had fairly extreme views on the police. And whether you agree with them or disagree with them, they are certainly not where the mainstream Seattle voters are. So, so the real question in that race is, will Seattle voters get over their distaste of the Republican Party? I mean, I think Trump got 6% in Seattle. And to be fair to Ann David, said she did not support Trump and she voted for Joe Biden, but she still has that Republican label on her, And so where are voters going to fall on?
Dean, this year, which was very interesting, and something we don't normally see in Seattle or regional politics. Joe Wynn, a very young and dynamic state senator, who has had the ring to take.
Yeah, so Joe Wynn, I mean, he took a shot, but at the end of the day, I don't think he made the case, frankly. I think that he really, he started off with a strong message, a strong campaign, but at the end of the day, I don't think Joe Wynn, really, came up with a reason to dump down and to elect him. He's an interesting, bright young state senator, who I think has a future, but this wasn't his race, and running against Dow was a mistake. In my view, I think Dow will get over 60% of the vote. Juan? I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now, Dean?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yes.
I was just any of the local. I was just talking about any of the local initiatives that caught your eye this year.
This is a pretty quiet year on the ballot. There was no statewide ballot issues for the first year I can remember in many years. It was pretty slow on the ballot. Across the board. There were some very interesting ballot issues in Bellingham, but nothing in King County that is particularly interesting.
Well, man, I just really appreciate you taking the time to join us this evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're still going to check this around 9 o'clock?
Absolutely.
So, my friend, Dean Nielsen, the principal of CN4 Partners, thank you so much for joining us on Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
Thank you. Take care.
This is Juan Cotto, and I am live at the Columbia City Theater, just on Rainier Avenue, and you are on Rainier Avenue Radio.world, and I believe Lynn Idahosa has joined us.
Hi.
Lynn, how are you?
Good. How are you? Thanks for the invite.
I'm doing very well. It's another exciting night. Just getting returns coming in from King County. And I'm just so glad that you joined us. Tell us a little bit about the Federal Way Black Collective that you work on.
Well, the Federal Way Black Collective is a local nonprofit, and we are basically a nonprofit dedicated to serving service providers. So we provide a ton of direct services to local daycares and small business owners, connecting them to COVID relief funds and making sure that kids between the ages of 0 to 5 get developmental screening in partnership with a ton of great programs such as Best Starts for Kids King County, Because It Takes a Village, Child Care Learning Collaborative, and so many other great partners.
Lynn, on Rainier Avenue Radio, as you're well aware, we obviously focus on BIPOC communities and issues in BIPOC communities. The issues in our suburban cities where the populations are starting to migrate because they can afford it, because of affordability, the local elections in Renton and in Federal Way and in Kent, they have major impact on BIPOC communities. Would you share your thoughts on that?
Yes, definitely. Locally in South King County, I've been paying attention politically for I'd say about 7 years. And I've noticed a huge shift. So one of the main things you notice is more focusing on adding police versus adding social services or things to do with municipal policy and the homeless. And how those things get addressed really play into the balance of city councils. And when you're thinking about nonpartisan roles, one thing for me is it's all about balance. You want to have both perspectives to represent the community you guys are serving, but at the same time, you also want to have innovative policy making.
Can you tell us about some of the races that are going on in Federal Way tonight?
Yes, we have school board races and we also have city council races up. So we've got incumbents and we had a couple of appointments in the past 2 years. And so both Greg Baruso and Leandra Kraft are running to be retained. Hong Tran is up for election as well as, let's see, Martin lost in the primary, but I know then they've got Renee Seam, Jack Dovey, and Jack Walsh. And we had a couple of the folks on last night's show of what we like to call Monday Thoughts, simply because it's the day before the election. And so a number of the candidates came and just shared their perspectives, kind of as a last-ditch effort to engage voters. And I really think that there's going to be a good balance coming to the council. I think we have had great candidates running, regardless. All of them are like business owners or they work in some form of public service or they've dedicated their time to some form of public service. And I think it's going to be a good night. I'm kind of really excited actually to see what changes are ahead, especially when it comes to like distributing the budget with ARPA funds.
The Federal Way community, and in particular the Black community, has been able to really make an impact. When you take a look at some of the candidates that have stepped out of seats recently, Jesse Johnson, who is now in the state legislature, Jamila Taylor, it looks like the community is really starting to galvanize and support good candidates and really make its mark in electoral politics down in that area.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. Having new elected officials in office and making sure that we are supporting candidates, especially minority candidates, when you have more diverse areas. I think in the previous census, the area was maybe like 70 or 80% white, but now they're saying that it's a large shift. So we're looking at least 55% minority populations, not necessarily just Black, but other ethnicities and races because of gentrification. But it's also a great community to live in. It's one that's considered a bedroom community nestled, right between Seattle and Tacoma. So I think there will be a lot of changes coming based on those things.
The issues in the city of Seattle they carry most of the attention. They get most of the media population. Obviously, we have public safety issues and cries for certain aspects of the police department. We have a major homeless population. What are some of the key issues down in Federal Way that the voters will be swayed by tonight?
I think they mirror some of the issues that you see in Seattle. We have, especially in the past few months, we've had a push with the Housing Action Plan. And with a lot of the moves that are coming from the King County Council, such as purchasing additional transitional or shelter housing in hotels, that has been a huge issue. And as it regards specifically to the Black community, it's actually been kind of dangerous. I myself attended a housing action plan meeting and had to actually leave early because my son was with me and several community members were armed. And so it's very frustratingly dangerous, but they are showing up. About a little over a year ago, Mayor Farrell created an African-American Black community meeting. So every quarter, the mayor's office, most of the state legislators attend, judges, and they simply listen. It's not a space for them to really update the community outside of things that communities requested in the past meeting. And so I think creating those safe spaces is why we're going to see more voters engaged this year in the primaries, in the general election.
The idea always exists that all politics is local, and certainly you see that in these local municipality races. Does it get a little contentious down there? And you walk into QFC, you're likely to see the candidate.
Well, I think you do get that opportunity to like walk into your random store and talk and engage with the candidates. I think they do a good job of showing up in Federal Way. And I think that's why we kind of are a Benjamin community. It's pretty much expected that there's certain events they all have to go to where you can have conversations with them, even with restrictions, as long as they're outdoors. I think though that there's a lot of relationships on council people want to have continue, and I'm not sure they all will. As you see, one of our current council members, Martin Moore, did lose in the primary. So I think that's a strong indicator that people want change and they want people that are maybe in those seats to move around a bit. This is not like a social group, it's actual council work. We have council members that have made statements that they do not read the staff reports because they're too long. And quite frankly, that's very sad. So I'm glad to be seeing more people running that want to be engaged. They're folks that have backgrounds in finance or, like I said, small businesses. So they're going to do that work that they're used to doing in their daily lives, because quite frankly, we're about to receive too many funds that could do too much good to not do right by the residents of Federal Way.
You touched on it at the top of your comments, the basis for the school board. And obviously the school board at times is a down ballot race. It's also a thankless position. A lot of these folks are just educational activists and they're volunteers, and they put in long hours, not only to campaign for the position, but when they actually get the position, it's long hours of meetings and public criticism at times, very, very small wins. But it's such an office of impact, and it's an office where you can really make a difference in working with the community. Tell us about some of the school board races down there.
The school board races down here are tight. So I will say we have really engaged like Facebook groups. So you will see community members tag school board members and they're engaging in conversation on a regular basis. And it is not always pretty. There's been a lot of discourse over the past few years. And it's been, you see nationally this conversation about CRT that's being had within our school district. That conversation was brought up at our forum that the Federal Way mayor hosted a couple of weeks ago. So I think they're having difficult conversations that are mirroring nationwide conversations, which I'm glad to see because we are the third most diverse city in the country. So we should be leading the forefront on these kinds of conversations. And, they're very split. It's pretty, for it to be a nonpartisan race, I was very surprised to see this very separate rule of thought that doesn't always have children at the forefront of that planning and the exact purpose of public school, which is to give them a balanced quality education. So I really expect folks to make that down ballot vote and weigh in on it, because we've had even a couple of local nonprofits start dedicated to like walking the streets and sharing one perspective or another. So I think there's been a good job of door knocking, just not even for actual candidates, but issue knocking. So I think that really has been going to wake up a lot of residents in Federal Way to make sure their voice is heard.
And I know your commitment to children and families, and you and I both serve on the board of the Children's Campaign Fund, and I would be remiss not to mention that. And Lynn, you had an opportunity to run for state party chair last winter, and you went for it, and nothing, and your campaign was to basically elevate the position, and obviously you had support. Tell us a little bit about that experience and you working to persuade the Democratic Party and to find a position of leadership and influence, which you felt the call to do.
Well, I had been a member of the Washington State Dem Central Committee for about 2 years at that point, and I had countless conversations with different caucus leaders. I've met with state representatives, met with the party, and there was several times where there were like clear things that were uncomfortable for me.
Mhm.
And I just really felt like the real question was that did people want change? So I often use this kind of joke as in party leadership in that race was like having a bad boyfriend and making a decision. So for me and my family, the best thing for me to do was effect change elsewhere. And I still have great friendships. I'm a board member with
Mhm.
Whole Washington. I focus on a ton of things to further those values. But sometimes, when people show you who they are, believe them. If this is what you like, if you like the status quo, if it works for you, unless there's a conversation being had behind closed doors, I welcome you to continue that journey. But I'm also going to do the same. And I think that we're going to continue to see people exit unless someone starts listening at the top. And so that's why it's a huge priority of mine. I decided to just create and stay in my own bubble with the Federal Way Black Collective. And we take community surveys. We are out there engaging different groups and organizations to figure out what is needed, not only in Federal Way, but South King County. And once we pilot something, we've actually expanded it throughout the state. Our developmental screening program has been taken and trained by providers as far as Skagit County. So I can do what I need to do. And I believe that there's some things they need to do. And I'm still going to engage state legislators as I've been doing. And I think that's just the best path for me.
Lynn, the election night is always a night of tremendous hope and optimism. What are your best outcomes tonight? What is your hope and what is your best outcome for tonight?
Well, I mean, first of all, I just want to wish everyone well that's running because that is a tremendous job. That was a huge thing of my experience on the campaign trail. It's a lot of work and it's a lot of your whole self in those quiet moments. And so I wish everyone well. I'm particularly excited because I do foresee a ton of change regardless. I think there's so many great races. I know folks think that it's not a general election year, but seriously, when you look at the millions and of dollars that are going to come into our community to create change, those things are going to help restore families and our communities and rebuild and reopen. And it really matters who's writing those policies and signing off on those budgets. So I'm really looking forward to the city council races. There were a ton of finance people I saw step up, or people that had a general dedicated focus. And I just can't wait to see what happens. Are you asking for predictions?
Lynn, we appreciate you so much. Thanks for taking the time to come on and share with us your thoughts and ideas down in a place down in the South End, which has changed so dynamically over the years. And we look forward to seeing your star rise because it is rising. And just appreciate your time this evening. So thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too, Lynn. Thank you. Lynn Idahosa of the Federal Way Black Collective, and just one of the rising stars in our political community and a leader in our community. And so great to have her here on Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
That means so much. Thank you.
Juan Cotto, you're with Tony Benton, you're with Daniel Bellis. And we are here tonight at the Columbia City Theater. And we are just like so many of you, we're waiting for the election returns to come in. Once again, a very dynamic and a very spirited group of campaigns. And that's a fun thing about being on Rainier Avenue Radio. We get people looking at us from the windows and yes, sir. Lots of fun going on behind us and outside on Rainier Avenue. And once again, if you're down in the Rainier Avenue neighborhood, swing on by. We're having a great time this evening. Just waiting for King County to announce some of the returns, and we'll hear about the mayor's race. We heard from Dean Nielsen of CN4 Partners, who kind of set the tables around the issues that we've seen all summer, actually for the last 18 months: public safety, the homeless, the budget and look at two candidates in particular, Bruce Harrell and Lorena Gonzalez, running for the top seat in the city, running for the mayor's office. And then under them, kind of in the board of directors, the Seattle City Council, Teresa Mosqueda, who early on it was going to be a pretty simple race, but a gentleman by the name of Ken Wilson, who a lot of political folks had never even heard of until the primary, really put on a strong campaign at the end and is putting a little pressure on Teresa Mosqueda. He was definitely closing the primary lead that she had. It'll be interesting to see how those numbers turn out and what the mandate is, if it is a close race, in terms of what does that mean about the performance of the city council, a city council that has taken quite a bit of punishment from the community and pundits over the last several years. Then, of course, Dean touched on the race between Sarah Nelson and Nikita Oliver. And we spoke to a young lady by the name of Kendall, who was outside, was actually just 15 minutes ago, waving yard signs and encouraging people to drop their ballots off, so run over to the Rainier Community Center and get those final votes in for Nikita Oliver, and she's supporting, and really shared a story about South Seattle and the impact that she felt that Nikita Oliver would have as a Seattle City Council member. And of course, the elections going on in local races in the municipalities throughout Renton and Kent and Federal Way and Des Moines and Tukwila and Burien, where a number of people of color have moved because it's a little bit more affordable to live. And on Rainier Avenue Radio, we always discuss the diversity in our community and the impacts that public policy has on the local level. So we'll be paying close attention to races in Burien, for example. We know that Mayor Jimmy Mata, who has been a warrior for justice, and the up and coming political leaders in the local community and some of the municipalities down there, in the mayor of Burien, he's got his race going on. And a number of other folks in some of the Mayor Dana Ralph in Kent, she's up this year. Looks like they have a pretty secure opportunity to be reelected down in Kent. And so I'm going to throw this to Daniel Bellis, and he will update us on some information.
Yeah, very, very, very early returns here. One, King County has not reported anything, but we do have statewide results, if you will. And the advisory votes are coming in. All three of them looking at repealed numbers right now. 64% on number 36, 67% on number 37, and 65% on number 38. Now, again, King County has not reported any results yet, so these are more than likely Azotin, Benton, Clam, Cowlitz, Franklin, Ferry, Harbor, Island, Jefferson, Kitsap, Lewis, Pierce.
Tony, is there a calling number?
Are the ones that we have results for so far. But I'll be jumping in next when we have results for King County. But so far, those smaller counties definitely have voting to repeal the tax increases on the Washington advisory votes. So we'll see how things change when King County reports.
Daniel Bellis, thank you so much for that update. Oh boy, is he coming on? Do I see him in the StreamYard? Do I see the man, the myth, the legend? Do I see Saul Spady? Saul Spady, obviously a very well-known community activist, a political pundit, and someone who always follows the political scene so well. Saul, how are you, my friend?
Hey, Juan, it's really great to see you. Thanks for having me join. I'm outside the Ken Wilson for Council party. I had to wait until I could see some election results before I came on, or I would just be kind of talking blind. But, Ken, early results are showing him closer than probably people were predicting, about 6 points down. But generally, there's some energy inside. Everybody's having fun. I'm wearing a Mariners cap because I thought if he won this race, it would be about as well. It would give me some hope for the Mariners making the playoffs next year. But what's your take on the early election results? You're probably a little bit closer to a computer and what's going on.
We're hearing them just as you are. We haven't heard back from King County just yet, but hopefully Daniel Bellis will be able to get some information as you and I are conversing here over the next couple of minutes. And I wanted to ask you about this particular race, Saul. Ken Wilson, the only thing I remember him for is the former original Mariner radio broadcaster, right? I mean, I had heard of Kenneth Wilson until he showed up in the primary back in August, and Saul, he's been able to gain ground on an incumbent who had a pretty good lead after the primary.
Yeah, I mean, I do think Seattle has a general anti-incumbent fever. The closer you were to incumbency, the worse you did, right? Early mayoral results are showing Bruce Harrell with a big lead. Ann Davison is pushing something different than Pete Holmes, which NTK was even more extreme than Pete Holmes. She has a big lead. Sarah Nelson also kind of pushing the more moderate message. Ken was less known, but if you think about it, you're voting down the ballot. There was one election where you could say no to an incumbent, and that was Teresa Mosqueda, right? That was, and then you start to think about what she was positioning and putting forward, which was more of the same, right? And in some Seattle voters' mind, there's less safety out there right now. In some Seattle voters' mind, we haven't solved homelessness in the last 4 years or even made any progress. And then finally, the key issue that I think where Ken really stood out is he made it pretty basic. He said, I'm an engineer. I think we could open our bridges. And if we remember correctly, Teresa Mosqueda has overseen both a statement that, you know, the Magnolia Bridge, we don't have any funding for it, one of the richest cities in America, as well as the West Seattle Bridge being shut down to 100,000 drivers a day. So if you kind of like break all of those down, I think you could see a Ken Wilson being really close or even winning. Now, the early numbers aren't what you want to win, but if it ran away from the incumbent as we count more, if more people said, I just don't want an incumbent, you know, maybe he could come back and win this thing. So early numbers, I'd say everyone can be positive and drink another beer tonight.
So going to the mayor's race, and you and I had multiple conversations over this over the last 9 months. The city had talked about the fact that they were looking for something new, and there was as you said, there was a little bit of disconnect with the existing city council. Yet when the primary results came in, you had Bruce Harrell, who recently was a Seattle City Council member, and Lorena Gonzalez, who's currently the Seattle City Council president, end up as the top two candidates. Did we read too much into what we thought the electorate was thinking? Or was the election in the primary in particular, did it handicap some of the candidates who were out there but really couldn't connect with the community because of the issues around COVID, or what was the story there in your mind?
Well, you're always going to hear me tell you it was Facebook ads, and if anybody's ever heard me on the radio. But without being able to run Facebook ads and get your name out there in a mayoral race where there were a lot of people, 12, 13 candidates, the candidates with the most name recognition are always going to do the best in the primary where you have a really low turnout. And that's the case in Seattle. I mean, it's an off-year election in the summer where everyone's enjoying the weather, notwithstanding COVID. So I think those really read into it, in my opinion. I will say Bruce clearly positioned himself from the get-go that he wasn't running as an incumbent. His message was always, I left the council, I retired, I'd done great work, I've really been a member of the community, and you know what? I heard and saw everything that was going wrong. I started to talk to business owners, which we want to take a quick moment. Maybe he should have been talking to business owners while he was on the council, but Bruce really started to hear from regular Seattleites about the pain they were feeling, and that's why he ran, right? Lorena ran to continue what she's done on the council. Bruce ran because he had heard something different from the people, and he wanted to make a difference, or at least that's my take, having talked to Bruce Harrell during the campaign.
Speaking about Facebook ads and social media in politics, and you and I have had a number of conversations about how to look at those, the aspect of social media. Saw the Nicole Thomas Kennedy campaign, there was a number of independent expenditures. done on her that really took her social media on things that she said about the police and various aspects and posted those. And I was just wondering the impact of social media and the things that people say in their Twitter feeds and in their Facebook feed, those come back to either haunt you or create an opportunity for your opponent. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are in regards to some of the ads that came out.
Oh, your digital self and your physical self matter. And I know there's a lot of humor about this in the last couple days as Facebook announces it's going to change its name to Meta. But what they're really betting on as a multi-billion-dollar company is that your digital self is real and worth money and a space that you should maybe take as much care about as your individual self. And I think we can forgive bad tweets from a decade ago. And I'll tell you, Juan, when we first met, I was a young man thinking about my tweets and going back, and I didn't have to delete many, but there were some dumb tweets I said when I was 16 and 18. And, you know, I think that's even more intense now. And if you're a woman in her mid-30s who was saying the things NTK did on Twitter and then saying when she was asked in the media about them in person that she didn't think they were that bad and they just showed a little lack of maturity and a lot of emotional passion, I don't think you should expect to win in one of the most important cities in America. And Seattle should really consider itself in that, you know, little West Coast bias there, but we on Rainier Avenue Radio.
On your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.world, Saul Ann Davidson and many have labeled her a Republican, and I'm not exactly sure where that comes from, and I'm not sure what where
she switched
her
parties
politics are, but she put
she did switch parties
she
2 years
put on
ago.
a federal campaign. And once again, it speaks to the belief that somewhat conservative candidates can't win in Seattle. But here is the showing of a quote unquote, people have labeled her Republican and conservative, and yet it looks like she was definitely the front runner coming into this evening.
Well, and this is great news. As somebody who's been, I'm 20 years in. I may look old here, but I'm 32 into telling Republicans they should be pro-choice, pro-gay marriage, and pro-cannabis. I probably didn't pick up the pro-cannabis thing until I was 22, a little bit older. But what I'm trying to say is being a moderate in Washington, one that stands up for the social liberties, one who votes for the most rational candidate, something that Ann has said. She voted for Hillary Clinton. She voted for Joe Biden. She just switched parties because she was bullied so much in Seattle for standing up for the most important issue, which is homelessness and safety for the common person on the streets. And I'm going to just say this as simply as I can. The vote was based on if NTK gets elected and somebody runs by the street I'm on and assaults me, that's a misdemeanor that's thrown out. And if Ann wins, that person will at least have to go to court and face me and talk about why they punched me in the face, right? And that's, if you put it that simply, it really throws out the Republican-Democrat thing, right?
So the King County executive's race, and you and I had spoken in private, sometimes even on your show, about this. And in Seattle and throughout our region, people normally don't challenge each other. But here comes Joe Wynn, a first-term senator, a dynamic young candidate with a very, very powerful story. And he says, hey, I'm going to go ahead and run against a very powerful King County executive. And I thought that was refreshing in politics. And also change what we normally see in elected races. Thoughts about that?
Yeah, and you're cutting out a little bit, so let me know if I'm cutting out. I can always turn off my camera and go just to regular audio.
Back?
Here, I'm going to turn off my camera
Saul,
and just give everybody the... Yeah, I can hear you. Okay. I'm just turn off my camera so that
I was
we
just
can.
Wondering your thoughts on Joe Wynn's challenge of County Executive Dow Constantine.
I'm glad Joe did it. I'll be honest. I don't think the answer is to run to the left of where Dow sat, and I think Joe could have done a lot more to win moderate voters. That Dow really didn't have to. He didn't have to do any work to keep those moderate voters. And those are moderate voters that could have been disappointed with what he's done on homelessness if Joe put out a different plan than the status quo, which Joe's plan was probably just spend more money. I will also say, and this goes back to, the Facebook ads, it's super hard to beat an incumbent unless you can do digital advertising. And Joe put a lot of energy into his first senatorial campaign where he beat an incumbent and pulled off an unknown victory, but he had those digital ads. Now he doesn't. And it doesn't surprise me that he's far behind in early returns.
This is Juan Cotto with Saul Spady on your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Saul, hypothetically, the first 100 days of the new mayor, what do they need to do?
Oh, what they should do versus what they will do is very different. You'll see a cleanup of the trash and a real commitment to getting less trash both in our green spaces and throughout the city. I think you'll see a commitment to trying to get people into temporary housing in a more consistent manner. And then I think in close, you will see a return to civility that hasn't necessarily been seen in Seattle, just because, I'll say this, I think Mayor Durkin oversaw one of the hardest times to be mayor in the city of Seattle. And she has been given a bad rap because there is no harder job than being mayor of Seattle. But I do think it was time for a new mayor. I think Mayor Durkin loves Seattle. I think she stepped down because she thought it needed someone else. And, her and Bruce are friends, and I think there'll be a smoother transition than we've seen in a long time, and that'll be good for the city if Bruce can hold on. I do want to say one final note. There's a chance that all of these candidates that are in the lead lose if late returns go far left, if a lot of young people voted and went against this kind of push for a more modern message. I don't think anybody has won yet.
The early returns are coming in, Saul, and I've just got some text messages from King County. Sarah Nelson is way ahead for the Seattle City Council position 9 right now with the early returns. She has more than 60% of the vote to Nikita Oliver's 39%. Bruce Harrell is up 64-35 over Council Member Gonzalez, and Ann Davis.
That was a really bad commercial.
58-40 over Nicole Thomas Kennedy. So it looks like some of the primary results, at least in the early stages, are starting to come out. I don't have numbers on the Mosqueda versus Ken Wilson race, but the numbers that have come in for these other races, it looks like the primary results are holding.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I never thought Nikita Oliver, even if she'd run for mayor, had more than 40% of Seattle. And her really status quo group involved, a lot of the group that, like Lorena and NTK and Nikita Oliver really tied themselves together as a ticket. And it was a ticket that was pushing the status quo. It was a ticket pushing more spending. It was a ticket pushing no new ideas on homelessness. And that's not the best ticket, right? Like, that's all I can say. And the results are kind of following that message.
So in some of the races outside of the city of Seattle, you have municipal races going on in South King County. You have Renton has some big elections going on. And then that actually were quite contentious. You have the cities of Burien. You have the cities of Des Moines, Federal Way, Kent. They're having some big elections. The role of the municipalities and the suburban cities is really starting to impact the elections of the whole around Seattle. And I just wondering on your thought on some of those races that down in those smaller municipalities, which are really having impact on the county budget.
Well, and I will say this, I spend a lot of time in South King County now, and, always following a Dick's Drive-In to wherever it goes. And there's one at the Kent Des Moines border. But it's important that South King County raises its voice and participates more. It's kind of a bummer that there isn't just a huge city of South Seattle that could, that would be as big as Bellevue and be as big as Seattle in many ways, that could have an even larger voice. But these municipalities need to kind of band together because Seattle politics are so intense and egregious, they bleed out. And, if the Republicans could learn anything, it wouldn't be about Eastern Washington versus Western Washington. It would be about Seattle politics versus the rest of the state at large. And there's such a group of people, diverse. The most diverse areas of Washington are in South King County. And if you could win that group, a group that just wants to get first-time ownership, wants safety because many of them are refugees from places that had no law and order, right? These are not, if we go back to NTK, these are not NTK voters. These are Ann Davison voters. And the only thing that they're maybe really worried about is social liberties and being kicked out of the country because they're hard workers. And that's where Republicans could learn a lot and maybe send a different message in Washington. I think you're totally right. South King County is an exciting place, and those elections matter. I will tell you, I'm really interested to see what happens in that Kathy Lambert election. Do you have any results on that one?
Not yet, but we're hopefully getting some things coming from King County.
Oh, classic. This is a classic election night. No results from King County. Where have I heard this before?
I know with all this technology, the reports are still coming in from the mail carriers, and the horse-drawn buggies are bringing them down to King County where they're counting them by hand. Saul, the business community, especially in the city of Seattle and the most recent races, they definitely play a major role. Certainly in the race a couple of years ago with Egan Orion versus Shama Sawant, and the mailer that came out from Amazon and created quite a bit of stir in that campaign towards the end. The business community in Seattle and the candidates that they chose to support this year seemed a little bit more discreet in regards to how they were starting to support candidates. And I was just trying to get your thoughts in regards to the label of the establishment candidate or the business candidate. How did that play out this year?
I think you nailed it when you said the Amazon $1 million mailer. That was a very dumb decision made by somebody who wasn't deeply familiar with Seattle politics. And so what you see is, a heavy-handedness that created very different returns. I'll be honest, Juan, I was an Egan Orion voter full and clear, and I got like 20 mailers in the district, and it made even me think, God, do I want to vote for this guy? It was just too much. I still have a cool magnet, but that magnet must cost a lot of money. Anyways, what I'm trying to say is that was so unique. Even when we did the head tax, no business gave more than $30,000. It was a community effort. I think whenever the business community needs to win, it needs to be done together, and they need to not be the only voice. When you step into any race and give $1 million anywhere in the country with a week to go, outside of a race for president, you may, stub your foot and punch yourself in the face, which is exactly what Amazon did.
Saul, can you hang on for just 1 second? There's one more question I got to ask you before you go. I want to give Daniel Bellis an opportunity to give us an update. Daniel.
Thank you there, Juan. Election results for King County have finally come in, and for King County Executive, now, as Saul was describing, just to look at these numbers, more conservative voters come up first. So just to say that up front. Now, Constantine is leading Joe Wynn 57-42 in that first one right there, 57-42. In King County District 1, Rala Dimbowski with a huge lead over Sally Servan. It's 82-17 right there. We're also scrolling the results below on the screen right there if you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. In District 3, Sarah Perry leading Kathy Lambert 55-45. In District 5, taking up the Grove is over Shukri Olov, 68-31. In District 7, Pete Van Reichbauer leads Dominique Torgensen, 68-31. In District 9, Reagan Dunn with a huge lead over Kim Khan Bond, 64-36. In the commissioner races, Brian Calkins with a big lead over Norman Siegler, 73-26. In Commissioner number 3 race, Stephanie Bowman, very close in this one over Hamdi Mohammed. It is 51-49 in the Seattle Commissioner number 3 race. In Commissioner number 4, Peter Steinbrook and Toshiko Grace Hasagawa are in a dead heat in that one for Commissioner number 4. That is 49.98 for Steinbrook to Hasagawa's 49.44. We're talking about 0.5 difference in Commissioner number 4 right now as it stands. In the mayor race for Seattle, Bruce Harrell has a huge lead to start with over Lorena Gonzalez, 65-35. Right here in early returns. In the attorney race, Andy Davidson leads Nicole Thomas Kennedy, 58-41. Big lead for Ann Davidson. In council number 8, incumbent Teresa Mosqueda, a slim lead over Kenneth Wilson, 52-47. In council number 9 for Seattle, Sarah Nelson with a big lead early on over Nikita Oliver, 60-39 in that one. We also have Bellevue, Federal Way, and Kent and Renton to report as well. In Bellevue, number 2 position for the council, Conrad Lee leads Dexter Ford with 56-44. In number 4 for the council of Bellevue, Jared Newhouse leads Ruth Lipscomb, 58-42. In the race for number 6 for Bellevue, Lynn Robinson with a huge lead over Gina Johnson, 70-30%. Federal Way Mayor Jim Farrell with a big lead to start with, Rainier, 66-33%. In the Federal Way Council 2 race, Erica Norton leads Gregory Baruso, 60-40. In council number 4, Daniel Miller in a very, very, very slim lead over Huang Chan. It is 50.4% to 49.2% in the council number 4 race for Federal Way. In race for number 5 for Federal Way, and also another close one, 51-48. Very close, couple percentage points there. In number 6, Jack Doley with a little bit more of a lead over Renee Seam. It's 54-46. In Donna Ralph Kent Mayer, a huge lead over Donna M. Bennett, 71-29. Donna well in hand right there. And council number 4, Tony Troutner leads former Rainier Avenue Radio personality Cliff Coughlin, 59-40% in council number 4 position. In the number 6, Brenda Fincher, huge lead over Larry Hussey, 75-24. And in Renton, James Laberson for council number 1, big lead over Joe Todd, 62-38. The Renton council number 2 position, a much more closer contest. Ben Johnson, a very, very slim lead over Carmen Rivera. It is 50% to 49%.
Thank you so much, Daniel, for giving us an update on the election returns coming in from King County, and that's our first shot of hearing some of these returns from the evening. Saul, any surprises to you?
Well, I mean, I'll take the Ken Wilson, Teresa Mosqueda off the bat. I mean, the polling shows that Ken, was maybe 6-7 points behind. Right now, he's only 4 points behind. But this is really interesting, and this is a lot of people missed this when Donald Trump was running for office because they're not used to our mail-in voting style that we are kind of used to, born and raised here in Washington, where, candidates can come from behind and win because returns come in dumps, and the dumps have certain, general orders to their vote. And here's the deal for Ken. I do think votes are going to go away from Ann Davison late. I think votes are going to go away from Bruce late and from Lorena late, but that was a clear ticket, right? I talked about that ticket together against kind of the Sarah Nelson, Ann Davison, Sarah Nelson, Bruce Harrell ticket. And so what I'll say is, we got to watch and see what happens. The other big surprise, I don't know if you can call it a big surprise, but like Kathy Lambert being down 10 points in a general conservative landslide on the east side, right, is interesting and worth noting. And it goes to show people really don't like anything that could even be termed racist as part of the election. If you circle the only African-American candidate on a mailer, that's a really bad idea. If, let's say, you make fun of, in a way, both victims of sexual assault and the African-American community, also a bad idea down the stretch. And both Kathy and Lorena Gonzalez, while having different political views, both probably blew whatever chances they had with those, in particular, mailer and television ad.
Saul, certainly tonight is not going to be the last election of the year. As you know, we will certainly be sitting on pins and needles over the next several days, as will the candidates, to secure the returns that come in from the ballots that were turned in late. But in the first week of December, there's going to be another election, a recall election of a Seattle City Council member. And I live in District 3, and I'm seeing yard signs, that are almost drawn on the back of cardboard, either in support of or in support of the recall. And I was wondering, what are your thoughts in regards to how that is going to play out?
I think Shama Sawant will be recalled. That is my prediction. Again, I'm going back to this NTK vibe, this Lorena Gonzalez continuation of the status quo. I don't think that is what Seattle's looking for. And if we want to go nuts and bolts on it, the president of the United States held a rally where he told everybody to go march to the Capitol, and we called that insurrection. Shama Sawant held a rally, marched to City Hall, and let everybody in, and then marched to the mayor's house, where I guess it wasn't her, wink, wink, I know my video's off, but air quotes. But then the mob generally, wrote pretty awful things on the mayor's house. I mean, that type of behavior probably should lead to a recall, right? Donald Trump probably shouldn't win election again or run for office again. I think that's pretty simple to me. I hope voters in her district believe that, but I will leave you this. There is nothing more elite to the homeowner of Seattle than to sell out law and order for everybody else, because they don't care and they can just get private security. So maybe Shama wins, but that's nuts.
Saul, I just want to get your final thoughts on the evening. Just the early returns are in, obviously, as you said, and as we've seen in local politics here recently, a lot of the numbers can change over time. But I just want to give you the opportunity to give your final thoughts on what you've seen in the early results. And assume that the results will hold. What is the electorate telling us so far?
The electorate is telling us they want a different message on homelessness that isn't just constant compassion with no solution, which might go all the way to handing people drugs and or the needles they need to stay on the street. They want something different. They don't want trash in their parks. They want something different. They want misdemeanors to be prosecuted, right? They want something different. That's my general message. Even with Kathy Lambert's loss, the one to read into is Teresa Mosqueda's race. And then the last one is those port commissioners. I do have a joke on that. You could get a big victory if you just built the tram walkway, right? Goodness gracious, how much have they talked about building a walkway from the light rail all the way to the airport? Can't one of those people do it? And maybe they'd win an election by less than, 0.2% of a vote. But that's just me. But I'm all big on the most important local issues are what you should run on, and maybe you'll win.
Saul, thank you so much for your always spirited candor and your unabashed, open-minded thinking on the electorate and on politics. Thank you so much for spending time with us on your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio .world. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great night, and thanks for doing this local
Amen.
community radio. We all appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Saul Spady, and just from a noted historical local family, and in his own right, a political activist and analyst, and it's just wonderful to always catch his breath of fresh air on Seattle politics. Now we will go. Daniel, do you want to give us an update, or should we go to Michelle?
Just really quick one, an interesting development by King County. They have withdrew all of their numbers from the Secretary of State voting results website. So we don't know what that means, but right now, all the numbers that were reported are all showing zeros. King County has withdrew their results.
King County withdrawing the results, or could it be a technical glitch? Who knows? And we'll find out more about this on the state website. King County's numbers are not showing up, but who has showed up with us tonight is my good friend and the executive director. This is the president and CEO. Let me get the title right. I should know that by now. The president and CEO of the Metropolitan Seattle Urban League, Michelle Merriweather. Michelle, how are you tonight?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm doing good. We are on Rainier Avenue Radio.world. We're right here at the Columbia City Theater. We're getting faces and people waving at us in the background, and the bright lights are on me tonight. Michelle, another Seattle election night, local politics, and obviously the communities which the Urban League serves impacted by these local elections. When we were getting returns from King County and saw the numbers early on, it looks like Bruce Harrell has a large lead, and I just wondering what do you think that means to especially the communities that he reached out to? Obviously, Bruce has had tremendous connection with the Black community. I was wondering your thoughts. What does this early returns mean, and how do you feel about them?
You know, I feel good about it. I think while I certainly did not support any candidate outright, I did support and call for Lorena to withdraw her ad last week. And I do agree with your previous guest that probably had a lot to do with it. But I think Bruce ran a mighty fine campaign, I must say. And I do have to say that Bruce certainly takes credit while he was council president as to why the Urban League is still standing and the doors are still open. When we were going through some of our toughest times before I joined the organization, he made sure that resources were there to keep the doors open and keep us open and working and serving community. So I am glad for it. I think that the community has certainly spoken, like your previous guests mentioned, that they're ready for something different, a different response. And I think Bruce will make a great leader.
The Urban League, and obviously you have now been in that position for about, give me 4 years?
It'll be 4 years in February, so yeah.
Give us a brief update on where we are with the Urban League and the impact that the Urban League is having on our Seattle community.
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. We've been working hard to serve community. For your guests that may not know what the Urban League does, we've been in the Seattle community for 91 years as of yesterday, doing work to provide economic parity to the Black community and underserved and marginalized communities for the last 91 years through direct service in workforce development, connecting people to jobs and opportunity, housing, making sure that folks have safe, affordable housing on fair terms, education, ensuring that we close the educational gap and serving kids furthest away from educational justice, and advocacy and policy. While we try very hard to stay out of politics, we're extremely involved in policy and making sure that the policies align to uplift and support folks that are most in need, and making sure that there's parity and equity in all laws passed to serve community.
We've seen with the increase in property values and the increases in taxes that a lot of our people of color have had to leave the traditional neighborhoods here in the city of Seattle. And we've seen a migration of communities of color and people of color moving further south, some north, but for the majority down to Renton, to Kent, Des Moines, Burien, Federal Way. And we earlier had Lenny Hossa on talking about the impact of some of the races in the South King County area. But I just want to get your thoughts, because obviously some of the services that the Urban League is providing, they are also moving further and further south. And just the impact of some of the elections, if you wouldn't mind just sharing your thoughts on those races down in the South King County.
Well, I think it's reflective of where we're going as a community. Like you said, we're moving further south. I am, I will say I applaud those Black women and other leaders who stood up and said, "Sign me up." Win or lose, they won because they showed up and they stood up to represent community, and I applaud them for their work. And I hope that all of them continue to serve community. I applaud anyone who makes a decision to, take the hits that running for office or holding office brings. But I think that it certainly has showed us that change is coming, and whether they're serving in those seats or representing community, their voices will be heard somehow or some way, because the demographics are certainly changing and folks are moving down south, and they want their voices to be heard. And I think that certainly displayed itself as we saw the candidates who showed up to run for office. And I think that we'll see more of that in the years to come, for sure.
Michelle, obviously leadership, especially with Black women, and only bolstered this year by the first Black female vice president, Kamala Harris, and obviously in your namesake, Michelle Obama. And the role that she played with the grace and the intellect of being first lady, the role models for Black women, and the prospects definitely being raised by these two women in particular, but also local leaders like yourself. It really is exciting to see more Black women step up to take that leadership role.
It is, and it's certainly inspiring for me, although you don't ever have to worry about me running for office. I think that it is inspiring. I think that Black women for so long have played the background in uplifting and supporting community, and that is certainly an important role. But I think what we have learned, if not in the last year, certainly before that, that when Black women lead, great things happen. And when Black women stand up and elevate their voices, they're not doing it just for themselves. They're doing it for all of community. And it's a beautiful thing. And folks, I'm from Southern California, and I have family and friends all over the globe. But when I share with them how many Black women are in leadership positions in the Pacific Northwest, which is very white and very, progressive, certainly, they're definitely impressed. And I have the honor and privilege of being friends with many of those who ran for office, and as well as many of those who serve either in the bench or leading nonprofit organizations or elevating their voices for causes that are important to community. And it's a beautiful thing. And I love that we support and uplift each other. And I love how they show up and represent community.
You were with Juan Cotto, you were with Daniel Bellis, and you were with, of course, Tony B. on our community radio station, your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio .world. We are coming up on the top of the hour, and I'm just going to finish off by asking Michelle just a couple of more questions. Michelle, the balance in the position that you have, and I know I know that you have an outstanding board of directors at the Urban League. Many of them are able to take political stands, but you've also, how do you balance it being the president and CEO of a very, very visible organization? And you've got to walk a fine line with all of these candidates to make sure that that they're going to support our organization and see it effectively. And as you said, you're not in a political position, but you need good support. So how do you walk that fine line?
We walked up we engage with as many candidates that are willing, right, to talk to us about what their policies are and what their platform is. And we advocate for our agenda, right? We make sure that they hear what we stand for, what we mean when we say support community, and we have that expectation. And we are in partnership with other community organizations to make sure that we are all speaking from the same playbooks and making sure that they hear us and they see us and they value our thoughts and opinions. And they do. Many of them reached out while they were running for office and asked us what our priorities were, and making sure that they added those to their platforms and made those promises that if and when they held these positions, they would make sure that they showed up in support of the Black community and the folks that we serve at the Urban League in particular.
Michelle, are there any big events coming up at the Urban League that the public should be aware of?
There are. We have our 20th annual breakfast. It's a virtual breakfast this year, and it's free to attend November 30th, which is Giving Tuesday at 9 a.m. You can tune in virtually from the comfort of your office or your own home while you are taking in your morning coffee and listen to the great work that we have going on at the Urban League. It should be a great morning for sure.
And I'm sorry, when is that date again?
November 30th at 9 a.m. And they can find more information on our website, which is urbanleague.org, www.urbanleague.org.
Well, Michelle, we appreciate you so much. Thank you, and obviously your leadership, your grace, and what you've done to really reconnect the Urban League with the community and really build it back to a stable foundation. You've done an outstanding job as the leader of this organization and really making it once again a pillar in our community. And we thank you so much for that. And certainly here at Rainier Avenue Radio, we thank you for joining us tonight.
It's an honor to be here, and I thank you for serving on our board of directors and Tony for being such a great partner to the Urban League. And I just appreciate all the support and partnership that you all bring as well.
Michelle Merriweather, the president and chief executive officer of the Metropolitan Seattle Urban League. Thank you so much for being here on our community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio .world. Thank you, Michelle.
Absolutely.
Well, once again, good evening. This is Juan Cotto from the Columbia City Theater with my man Daniel Bellis and with Tony B. And we are just reading the elections coming in from King County. And I want to go throw this to Daniel. Daniel, do we have an update of any of the elections going on right now?
Well, the thing is, Juan, as it is currently 9:03 p.m. and we are just about to go off the air, King County reports that they will not do another ballot count until tomorrow at 4 p.m. So the numbers that we have right now that we have reported on the air tonight, that's all we're going to have until tomorrow at 4 p.m. It says that 311,000 ballots have been counted for King County. Estimated ballots left to count are 120,000. So a lot of these races could skew either way, and those numbers will be reported again with an update tomorrow at 4 p.m. So if you want to see how these races turn out, you can listen to your local news, or you can check out the Secretary of State website tomorrow at 4 p.m. with another ballot drop for King County. There's an estimate of King County's voter turnaround being about 22%, but that's an early number, so hopefully that one creeps up. But that is the numbers for King County right now. The numbers we have are just the numbers we're going to have tonight. So there will not be any more updates. And well, this we're about to throw into our pre-scheduled program, but we would like to invite you all to tune in to a triple header of district football going on this weekend. Starting this Friday, Auburn versus O'Dea. That goes down on Friday at 5 p.m. And Saturday, a doubleheader, Ferndale at Garfield at 2 p.m. on Saturday, followed by Snohomish at Rainier Beach at 5 p.m. A triple header of 3A WIAA district playoffs, all loser out games all the way, and we'll cover them right here on Rainier Avenue Radio until the state championship. But Auburn O'Dea Friday 5 p.m., Ferndale Garfield Saturday 2 p.m., and Snohomish Rainier Beach 5 p.m.
Telling the stories of our kids in the community, and it's so exciting to be a part of the sports broadcasts here at Rainier Avenue Radio. Always a compelling weekend for the state playoffs, so we hope you'll join us for that this weekend. And sports director Rick Dupree and I will be calling the games this weekend, so looking forward to connecting with our audience all weekend on Rainier Avenue Radio. Some exciting football games coming up. Well, once again, Daniel, thanks so much for the updates. Sort of a surprise that King County has decided to basically make an announcement or hold all announcements on the ballots until 4 o'clock tomorrow after putting out the early return. So we at least got a little bit of a taste of it. And I know that the candidates and I know that really the community will be on pins and needles till we get the results tomorrow at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I just want to say once again, thanks to our guests we had this evening. Obviously, Dean Nielsen, Lynn Idahosa, Saul Spady, Michelle Merriweather, obviously my longtime friend Cindy Laws. I wish you could have been on with us, just couldn't connect with the technology, but it would have been great to hear Cindy and her incredible insights on this evening. And I'm sure she will probably be texting to me on what happened with the returns coming out of King County and why we have a little bit of a wait. So hopefully this was an informative evening for you. I hope you heard some of the information from some of the best and brightest political minds in the area. And we'll wait till tomorrow at 4 o'clock to hear the up-to-date results from the county.
All right, thank you there, Juan. This is Daniel Bellis. We're going to return you to regularly scheduled programming. And actually, if you tune in right here on the Rainier Avenue Radio stream app, Rainier Avenue Radio, the iPhone and Android users, and the website, on the upper corner of RainierAvenueRadio.world, we are going to replay our City Council position number 9 for Seattle debates right now. So tune in on the Rainier Avenue Radio stream app and website right now. And thank you for listening tonight to our election results special with Juan Cotto.